Right. My name is Mr. Pavlo, and I'm somebody who's looking to get in the analytics scene. I One thing that I thought was really key, that I loved when I was first following the scene, was tier lists, and I haven't seen one in a while. So I'm looking to put out a patch 6.1 competitive tier list. Okay. Before I do this, I want to point out a few things. First of all, I think a lot of the times tier lists aren't provided with a lot of background information, like information on, why the champs are there, aside from, okay, this champ's good in the meta. So the first thing I want to do is I want to lay out 5 things that I think are really, really key to the meta. And of course, there's overlap in these, and I think the champions that we see in pro play. This is, of course, Games of Legends, a wonderful site. Jat showed it on his video. It has champion picks. So, the champions that we see here are picked for probably one of these 5 reasons. The number one is going to be knocking down / defending towers. Number 2, vision control. Number 3, objective control. Number 4, creating favorable lanes. And number 5, creating favorable fights. So, quickly, I mean, this could be its own video in itself, but quickly I want to break these down and explain why I think they're important. So, number 1, knocking down / defending towers. This meta is super, super tower dependent. With the lane swap, with the towers' weakened resistances, with tier 2 towers being weaker, tier 1 towers are more important. With vision being reduced, it's harder to get deep vision in the enemy jungle, so knocking down a mid tower and allowing your team to safely rotate through the mid lane and get deep vision is really important. Deep vision's hard because it's so much easier to keep up defensive pinks than it is to get, offensive wards in. So, knocking down defending towers. Also, with quicker game times, you want more gold, and towers are your number one source for global gold right now. So towers are, in general, really, really important in meta right now, and I feel that they're the most important objective in the meta right now. Number 2, vision control. As we kind of touched upon, some champions offer, better vision control than others, be it like, abilities to get out when going for deep wards, or abilities to scout out enemies. So this is something important, kind of going along with what I said earlier with the tower control. Vision's really hard to come by with the reduced number of wards, so champions that aid this are generally valued highly. Number 3, objective control. Baron, really, really important right now. Dragon, maybe not as much, but Baron, and just having a champion that can have control over Baron, be able to secure it when you do it. Champions that can zone people off towers so your team can secure that. All really important right now. Creating favorable lanes, number 4. This is a little bit different. Basically what this means is creating winning lanes, basically. And so right now, what most teams do when they have winning lanes, and what most teams do when they have losing lanes, is lane swap. And so if you can force your opponent to want to lane swap and then meet them in a 2v2, like the UOL Fnatic game or the TSM CLG, this TSM CLG game, where CLG and UOL had very winning lanes, and TSM tried to swap, and they were mirrored, and then they just didn't have anything to do. So creating favorable lanes is really important because it forces your opponent in lane swap, and they can be delayed. And so when your opponent's delayed in a lane swap, you can get a huge, huge advantage. And number 5 is creating favorable fights. Now, this is something teamfighting's really not as big in the meta right now as it has been in the past. Of course, there are going to be a lot of games decided by a favorable fight, but usually by the time a winning team wants to pick a team fight, it will be a fight they can't lose. So I don't think team fight is as important now in the meta as it has been in the past. That's why we see less champions like Orianna in the meta right now. That being said, this also includes, being able to disengage from a fight when your team is not fighting on positive terms, which is really, really important, as we'll come to see. So those are the 5 things that I think, in my opinion, go into, making a champion top tier right now, and, competitive viable. So I guess we'll just go across and start with top tier 1. It's going to be Tom. Asterisk by the champion means I think it's first pick worthy. Tahm Kench, really, really good champion right now. Oh, quickly, I'm not going to include Ryze and Gangplank in here. They're both extremely powerful champions. Tier 1 in, I feel, Ryze in top lane, Gangplank in middle, and even top. However, they're banned so often that it's kind of hard to get a lot of data on them. I'm sure they are top tier, but a thing that goes in this rankings is how they rank against other top tier picks, and we really just don't see these champions very often because they are banned so much. And so obviously, while they are incredibly powerful, hence their ban rate, I'm not going to talk about them that much. Okay, so top number 1, Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench top. It's useful for a variety of reasons. First of all, Tahm Kench is really, really hard to kill. With Grey Health and 2 or 3 tanky items, guy literally does not die. Live in team fights for forever. He has above average damage for top lane tank. In the, I believe, KT versus Ku series, there's this ridiculous play where a Tahm Kench autos Illusion for 300 health to end a duel. Like 300 damage in 1 auto attack from a tank. It's insane. Like, he can solo out carries. He can incredible CC. And so that's all great. That, he's got CC, he's got tankiness. But not only does he have that, he also enables teams to run multiple AD carry comps because he can protect an AD carry. And, going along with, number 1, knocking down defending towers, AD carries are obviously the best people at knocking down towers. And so teams have started seeing more multiple AD carry comps. So you can see Corki mid, high priority pick, Graves top, Graves jungle, Kindred. These champs that knock down towers very well and can do so outside of the AD carry position. So Tahm Kench, really, really enables that to happen. Alright, so Tom is number 1, first pick worthy. I feel like he's, kind of at his own place. So now next we have Fiora, Poppy, and Lissandra. All still tier 1, but a step behind Tahm Kench, and they're all strong for their own reasons. Primarily, first of all, Fiora. Okay, Fiora takes tanks out. Like, Tahm Kench, one reason he's really good, he can actually go toe-to-toe with Fiora. Other tanks cannot do that, so that's a big barometer for tanks right now in meta, is like, if you leave Fiora up and pick a Shen top, then she's just going to get solo killed at 30, or Shen's just going to get solo killed at 30 minutes by Fiora, who has 3 items. Tahm Kench doesn't do that. Tahm Kench can go toe-to-toe with Fiora, and that's an incredibly useful ability that tanks need to have if you want to see them top. So Fiora obviously has that pressure on tanks, has the best split push pressure of any top laner in the meta right now, takes towers ridiculously quickly with her E, her riposte works to get her out of ganks. Honestly, I think Fiora is probably really, really good right now because in a lane swap scenario, when you can swap lanes and let your Fiora get solo gold on the tower, that'll really help get her to that Jarum's Fist early, which provides it's a really solid item for laning. That's why you see Fiora's going to Titanic Hydra first, is the stats are just better for early laning when Fiora's weaker. It'll also help Fiora be like level 5 or level 6 when she actually meets her lane opponent, which is when, she starts being able to have this 1v1 pressure. So, first pick worthy, maybe not as much as Tom, but still a really, really good champion. Next is Poppy. Poppy, as we saw in the TSM versus who they play, TSM versus Immortals game, Poppy can actually deal with Fiora in a 1v1 late game, so that's really, really good. She blocks Fiora's lunge with her W, she blocks Fiora's lunge with the W, so really high, passes the Fiora test. That's why we see her in top lane. Also, Poppy, just incredible utility. With the stun that you can set up if you have sloppy team fights, that the pop-up on her short-channeled ultimate can set up your teammates and get your teammates in position for their skill shots. Just a lot of really good utility that Poppy brings, and she scales so well off tanky items because of the bonus armor and MR she gets off her W. So she's just a really, really solid champion. Benefits a lot from the items right now that are played, like being able to build double tank item into Frozen Gauntlet and having all these insane defensive stats and incredibly high, incredibly high cooldown reduction is really good for Poppy. So that's why we see her up here in tier 1. Lyssandra's next. Lyssandra's our first major flex pick that we see in this tier list. Flex picks are really, really important, going along with number 4, creating the favorable lanes. Being able to counterpick a lane right now is really big, because if you can force your opponent into an unfavorable matchup, you're going to be able to shove that lane, or generally you're going to be out-pressure that lane, which can lead to tower damage, and tower damage is like tantamount for laning phase right now. And so Lysandra, very good flex pick. You mostly see her first pick because of that. You can go top or mid, of course. In top lane, she's probably slightly below all these picks. She's up there because of her utility. Her hard CC, again, so Lysandra and Fiora have an interesting lane. Fiora can solo kill Lysandra, but Lysandra can set up kills on Fiora. So that's a good point for Lysandra, that her ultimate's really good in pick compositions. If you catch somebody out and you ult them, that's a 1.5 second stun that your team can set up. And also, later game, she can ult herself and then Zhonya's, and that's 5 seconds that you just have this presence in the middle of a team fight while the rest of your team is, damaging on the other side. So Lysandra's, it's a very solid champion, doesn't have the most remarkable damage, but has wave clear, which is really important, as we'll hopefully see later on in the top lane. So if you run Lysandra top lane, you can run something without wave clear mid, which I really don't think is very good right now. So it just brings a lot to your team. She's more of a better team pick than she is an individual champion. So at like tier 1.5, T1.5, I have Graves. Graves top, pretty new pick. It's Trace from Jinair specialty. He barely brought it in the meta, and we saw Kebushard play it for Vitality in Europe. Graves, again, has that flex pick nature for all the reasons I talked about it being good on Lysandra. It's good on Graves, Graves lanes well into Tahm Kench, which is why he's up here. Tahm Kench, very little kill pressure on Graves. Graves, very little kill pressure on Tahm Kench. However, Graves naturally shoves waves, while Tahm has to auto them to shove them. So, as we saw in the Jinair game, I forget who they were playing. It was the one where they first ran the AAA comp. Graves just pushed in Tahm Kench, and, it was standard laning, and eventually Graves was able to chip down that tower. That was the Jinair SKT game, I believe. So Graves was eventually able to get down that tower, and just able to shove in waves constantly and pressure tower constantly. Makes him really good pick in top lane. He gets really, really tanky from his passive. His E gives him a ton of armor and MR. Can get very, very tanky with, especially with the Sterak's Gauge and Maw of Malmortius, which he builds very, very well. They're great items on him. He's really, really hard to kill. Look at Kebushard in yesterday's Vitality game. Gets caught out by an Ahri Charm, and they burst everything on him, and he lives because he has Sterak's Shield and Maw, and about 100 armor and MR from his E. And then all their burst is gone, and Graves is still dealing incredible amounts of damage. That's something I really haven't mentioned, but Graves deals so much damage in team fights, and especially in like jungle skirmishes. He can one-shot people. It's crazy. Graves does so much damage. So I've got him alone at tier 1.5. So tier 2, I have Gnar. Gnar is kind of a strange champion right now. He lanes well into something like Lysandra, or even a Tahm Kench right now. Tahm Kench has kill pressure on, but Gnar's in kind of a weird spot because team fighting really isn't super highly valued right now. And Gnar's, of course, Mega Gnar form, ultimate is incredible in team fights, and it's not like team fighting doesn't happen. Like you can have team fights if you get ahead. So I think Gnar still definitely has a place in the meta. He doesn't match up particularly well into Fiora, matches up okay into Poppy, okay into Lysandra. So, I mean, his matchups aren't great, but, he still has that crazy teamfight pressure. he can be so annoying in mini Gnar form, just harassing with auto attacks, building either a Frozen Mallet or a Sterak's Gauge. So I think he definitely has a place in the meta. I just don't think it's at the top right now. And as you can see, he's kind of highly picked. 10 picks this week, so he's definitely not a bad champion. Yes, after Gnar, I have Quinn. Now, Quintop is something that we really haven't seen that much outside of the LPL. It's something that does really, really good against Fiora. Kind of struggles against Poppy, does well against Lissandra. And can lane against Gnar. I don't believe I've seen that lane matchup, but I imagine Quinn can do fine on it. So Quinn, what she does is really, really good duelist. Builds same itemization as Graves. Has very, very beneficial itemization right now. That stuff like Youmuu's Ghostblade is really good. Stuff like Morbius, Sterak's Gauge, things like that are really, really good. Very, very good 1v1 laning. Quinn also really benefits from an open map, which we see a lot in lane swap scenarios where top and bottom tier 1 turrets are knocked down. Or top and bottom tier 1 turrets are knocked down on both sides. And so Quinn, with her insane mobility on her ultimate, can really, roam around and make plays on other lanes because there's so much open map. And she also takes advantage of the lack of vision. Assassins are in kind of a weird spot right now, but Quinn can have that assassin potential and can roam. Just her ability to be somewhere very, very fast when vision is limited is really, really good. I honestly probably have her a little bit too high right now, but I am pretty sure we're going to see it's getting banned over in the LCK. It got banned against KOO all 3 games that they played against KT, so it's obviously a good pick. I expect we'll see it more coming up. After Quinn, I have your random tanks. So this is your Shen, your Malf, and your Mundo. In that order. Shen being probably the most valuable, Malf and Mundo probably not as valuable. So you can't simply you cannot pick these champions if you let the other team if you don't ban Fiora. So Shen will just get soloed by Fiora. Malphite, great against Fiora until 20 minutes and 2 items, then gets soloed by Fiora. Mundo gets soloed by Fiora. These champions are just going to get out-pressured by a Fiora, get out-pressured by a Tom, get out-pressured by a Poppy. They're not as good in the 1v1 matchup, and they might have slightly higher teamfight impact, that's really, really not made up for it in games where teamfighting is not as much of a priority and laning phase is extended. So I have these guys. Shen, of course, he's useful. His ability to come into on a frontline target with the ultimate and get a taunt is really, really valuable. Malphite, of course, has that really good ultimate, but just some hard lane matchups like Lissandra into Malphite is just terrible. And Dr. Mundo, we've mostly seen teams that just want to disregard their top laner and play Mundo top, like in the Renegades and TSM were the 2 that played him most recently. We haven't seen him in the past week, so I think he's done. He's getting nerfed as well, so I don't think there's too much to say about Dr. Mundo. You can pick him if you want a top laner that you can get ganked for 20 minutes and fall really far behind and then still be really tanky, but the presence of Trundle and the presence of Fiora just kind of push Mundo out right now. And so now at this question mark tier, champs that I think are champs that we've seen, have some success, and that I think we'll be seeing in the meta pretty soon, and that's going to be Morgana. So this was a Trace specialty pick from last year, very popular around the world, and then we saw it again recently in Champions. I don't think Champion GG hasn't updated yet, but we saw it last night in the OGN. It's a pick. I think Morgana's really, really solid in the meta right now, and I'm surprised we hadn't seen more of her. CC is really important, especially because creating picks, again, if we look at objective control and tower, so creating picks lets you get objective control. So picks champions like Elise right now, champions like Ahri, champions that can get these picks are really important. And so a champion like Morgana shuts that down. Like with the Black Shield's a ridiculous ability, and with a Morgana top lane, you press Tormented Soil on the wave, and then if you're laning against, I don't know, something like a Poppy, you just shove her in, and then you slowly chip down her tower, and then you're able to get that tower if it's a standard laning. And even even in non-standard laning, in a lane swap scenario, she, can still, farm up, and she's got a good teamfight presence. And I think Black Shield is really, really valuable right now. If you wanna run something like a Misfortune AD carry, we saw Vitality do this extremely successfully. Um, Black Shield the Misfortune, and then she just gets to run free and not care about CC for her ultimate. Alright, so jungle. Jungle is very limited champion pool right now. Tier 1, Elise. Number 1. I don't think this should come as a surprise to many people. Elise, probably just the best jungler right now. Most picked, as we can see. Banned sometimes, yep. Of 39 games, she was picked and banned in 29, so that's a pretty high percentage. Just, gives you a lot of the jungle. Picks objective control with her Spider Execute. Great champion at doing the Rift Herald, which is an objective that's seeing more and more importance. Being able to cocoon people and create pressure. Just the amount of early pressure she has. A lot of variable build paths, too. She's just a champion that really does everything from the jungle right now, and that's why Elise has always been strong. She's a champ that does everything. Even if you fall behind, you still have incredible utility because you have a 1.5 second stun that you can just throw out. So, I think Elise is a very good champion. Best jungler, but it's close. So, and she's definitely first pickable. So, next I have Graves. Kind of for all the reasons I talked about with him top. He does grading in the jungle, barely takes any damage because he can Q into walls. Great, insane damage. His ganking, all these champions that we see top, Tahm Kench, Poppy, Lissandra, Gnar, these champions have CC. So Graves can walk in to a lane that has CC and just burst somebody. So you don't need this incredible CC from your jungler as much, so Graves offers that incredible damage, and again, the surprising tankiness that I talked about earlier, and the flex pick nature, so I have him at the number 2 jungle spot. Okay, number 3 is a toss-up between Kindred and Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai, I think that's how you spell it. Okay, so Kindred, kind of similar position with Graves, except with less damage and a game-changing ultimate. So Kindred also kind of enables this squishy multiple ADC comp. She is an ADC herself, so tower damage is right there. She also helps create favorable fights, right here. As I talked about before, that's also kind of on disengage. So Kindred can ult somebody. If they blow everything and trying to kill one of your ADCs, then you can just put your Kindred ult on them. And you can also disengage from Kindred ult, save somebody and get away. You're probably going to have casualties, but it's better than getting 5 for nothing aced. So lots of damage, great objective control. That's why I have her. That's why I think she's definitely up here. Because with like 5 or 6 stacks, Baron dies instantly to Kindred and the top laner. Great champion. Kind of interestingly, it sounds like she'll be disabled till patch 6.3 because of a bug. So jungle is actually a position where you could force, because there are so few picks that are really viable, you could actually force your opponent onto something that's not very good at all. Rek'Sai, I have right here. Rek'Sai is kind of your prototypical good jungler, less so than Elise, but it has the gank potential, has mobility, it has everything you want. You guys know what Rek'Sai does. She builds. One thing I want to talk about, which I think makes Rek'Sai a good pick, is vision control. So Rek'Sai's Tremor Sense is really good against teams that want to pick you off, because placing wards is incredibly dangerous against these kind of teams. And so having a champion like Rek'Sai that can give you that Tremor Sense from such a long range is really good. And again, with vision cut down so much, having that ability is really priceless. So that's what I think makes Rek'Sai a top tier jungle pick. And, again, team fights and her ultimate late game too. We've seen Airwalks from Roccat really split pushing with Rek'Sai. I don't know if that's something we've really only seen him do. But, you have a teleport, so, you can send your jungler to clear a bot wave and not worry about the enemy team taking Baron. So, as you can see, she's right up there with Elise in picks, and I think she's, I have her behind Graves, but, tied with Kindred, so. Again, I think that's a lot because a lot of these junglers are still adapting to play Kindred and Rek'Sai. or Kindred and Graves, I'm sorry. So we see more of her right now. So now tier 1.5 is Lee Sin. I think so. Everyone knows what Lee Sin does. Great ganking, great vision control. Can really do some things that no other champion can, and that's why he's up here. Just look at the Vitality game again versus Fnatic. Shook is able to create like a game-winning pick, or that's Vitality Origin. Shook is able to create like a game-winning pick on Power of Evil, just with that kickback. And so Lee Sin has some really really good abilities. It's just right now the thing that's holding him back most, he doesn't have as good of a build path as the other champions. Somebody like Graves and Kindred can build damage because they're ranged, but Lee Sin kind of wants damage, so maybe a Warrior Enchant. But after that, like if he builds another damage item like a Maw, he's just like way too squishy. So Graves or Lee Sin kind of struggles in the build path area. I just don't think he brings quite as much to the table as somebody like an Elise, a Graves, a Kindred, or a Rek'Sai. But still very good champion. I've seen a lot of Lee Sin pickups when like Elise is banned and Rek'Sai's picked because junglers might have as much comfort on Kindred or Graves. And then tier 2, I'll put Nidalee. I'm not sure. I don't think Nidalee's that good right now, but champion that can definitely get played. Good ganking, really really good early jungler. I'm not going to talk too much about Nidalee. I think she's good. I think she'll probably see more play if Kindred is gone. Champion junglers can play already. So, yep, Nidalee. She does what she does. Don't pick her above Elise, Graves, Kindred, Rek'Sai, or Lee Sin. Alright, mid lane is the most flexible. So I'm going to start off with wave clear mid laners. Wave clear mids. And this is going to be Lulu. Let me look at my notes real quickly. Lulu, Lissandra, Victor, and Ahri. So, mid tower is so important right now. So important. It lets you control vision. It lets you control vision in the enemy jungle. It gives you so much more control on Baron and Dragon and Rift and River objectives. Free rotations, creates so many picks. It's really what allows a team to get deep vision, which sets up for all of that. So, being able to defend mid tower is super important. So champions that have wave clear can really get high priority. So Lulu can flex to top lane as well, probably in this tier 2 area. But probably best mid lane right now. Has that wave clear, has all her utility. Lulu's been doing this and has been a top pick in the meta for forever now. 8 picks, 20 bans, as you can see. But interestingly, there's really only 180 carry in the meta that synergizes really well with Lulu, and that's Lucian. So we saw an unsuccessful Lulu comp in the LCK when Lucian was taken away, because like Lulu with Ezreal is not going to be very. I think it was actually in the LPL. Lulu with Ezreal is not very good. Lulu with Kalista is not as good. Lulu with Corki is not that good. So really, if you pick Lulu, you're going to want to get Lucian as well. But great amount of utility. Again, a champion that works really well with his multiple AD comps. So if you're going to run something like a Graves in the jungle or Quinn in the top lane, you're going to want that utility, and Lulu gives you like a second support for all your AD carries, So and of course that incredible wave clear. Glitterlance instant clearing waves is good. Frost Queen's Claim is really good on Lulu. Frost Queen's Claim is really important right now because again, when Vision's so nerfed, having this item that gives you Vision is really good. So Lulu builds that excellently. Lissandra, I have next. Kind of talked about these reasons. Top lane. She has, wave clear, which you really want. Mid, I think she's really important because she can take teleport as a mid laner. I guess Lulu can as well, but it's really probably best on Lissandra. So what taking teleport on Lissandra does is it gives you another option against something like a Fiora, where you can set up a counter play with teleport or a play with teleport, where you can teleport in with Lissandra and then use all your CC to lock down a top lane or lock down a bottom laner and get a kill. So, again, kind of the reasons I said before, incredible CC, teamfight presence, wave clear, yep. Viktor, everything I said about Lissandra, but not the teleport presence. More damage, which is great, doesn't have that lockdown CC, but Viktor probably has the safest wave clear of any of these champions. Guy can sit back and throw a death ray and insta-clear a wave. It's a strategy KT has been employing when they've been trying to get late game dragons and dragon counts. You just have a Viktor in the mid lane, and he just clears every single wave, and then you can't do anything. Because you can't push down mid tower unless you kill the Viktor, but the Viktor just walks up, clears a wave, and sits under his tower. So Viktor really, really good at doing that. Probably the best champion in the meta, just clearing mid. And he scales so well with items, too. He's good with items that are strong in the meta. So Abyssal Scepter, very strong item, very good on Viktor. Rylai's Crystal Scepter, he's probably the only one. I guess Ahri can do it as well. Probably the best champion of these champs at building Rylai's Crystal Scepter, which gives a lot of utility to his ultimate. He's got just a lot of utility, a lot of damage, so that's why he's up in the tier 1. Next is Ahri. So Ahri has seen kind of a resurgence since Dopa put her as his #1 mid laner in solo queue. Ahri's really your best assassin option if you still want to have wave clear as a mid laner, and so none of the other assassin mids have as good wave clear as Ahri, and so that's why I think she sees a lot of play. The ability to delete a squishy target when teams are running many squishy targets is really useful. I don't think Ahri as a champion is that outstanding, but against she fares really, really well against champions in the meta right now, and of course has that wave clear that you want in a mid laner. So that's why I think she's a tier 1 pick. And so after these guys, I have Corki. All right, Corki mid. Faker did it first. Surprise, surprise, Faker breaking out something. So Corki mid, again, knocking down towers and objectives. Corki mid, knocks down towers. You throw a missile and you get a Sheen proc. That's 150 damage on a tower. You do that wave after wave, that tower is going to go down eventually. Vision control doesn't really help there. Objective control, the package is... Creating favorable fights is probably the next best area where Corki helps and create... Okay. Objective control and creating favorable fights. So Corki, in terms of objective control, package is incredible, but for objective control, Corki's rockets do a surprising amount of damage, and especially when you have a mid lane Corki with blue buff, he can fire them out over and over and over again and poke your team off an objective. And so if he's able to poke a team off an objective, then that team's able to get that objective. I mean, it's what poke comps do. It's what the whole premise behind them. So Corki really enables that out of the mid lane, and he's also incredibly, incredibly hard to gank, because Valkyrie, and you take flash and heal, it's really hard to gank somebody with a great escape mechanism like Valkyrie and a flash, and like if you run something like Elise TF, he'll just run cleanse. So really hard to gank, but I mean, slightly lower priority than these wave clear mids, but still really good. Tier 2, at the top of tier 2, I have Lux. This is a pick that we've seen, actually saw it in Europe a little bit, but pretty much exclusively in Korea. Lux by herself isn't that outstanding. She has a very, very good build path. Okay, and Frostgreen's Claim and Abyssal Scepter, both great items on her. And those are probably your two. Frostgreen's Claim, Rod of Ages, and Abyssal Scepter are the best items for mid laners right now, pretty definitively. And champions that build those are the champions we see. So, Lux, great build path. One thing Lux really does is she is probably the best of these, except for Lissandra, at creating picks. With her long-range Q, and then when Vision's limited, being able to fire a Q over a wall on somebody checking a bush is really, really good, and so Lux does that. The one area where Lux struggles is she cannot 100-0 people. She will get people down to 80% health, or somewhere around there. And that's why I don't have her as tier 1 mid laner. Lux, however, if you run Lux in a proper composition, like the KT ran a really good comp with Lux mid, and they had a Lucian AD carry, and Lux bursted LeBlanc down to 20% health, and Lucian killed her and killed her. And so, she has that ability, has wave clear, she's pretty susceptible to ganks, which is something I guess Victor is too, but something these other picks don't have as much. So it takes a little bit off. It's still a really good pick. I expect to see her a lot more in NA and EU than we have been so far. Okay, so that's Lux. Next is LeBlanc. LeBlanc's in a really interesting spot. So she's your first like AP mage that you see that's not really a wave clear oriented mage. She's got that assassin potential. And the reason why we see LeBlanc not as much is because champs like Tahm Kench, Poppy, Lissandra, just these top laners are so good at dealing with LeBlanc. Champions like Elise, Rek'Sai, Kindred, these champions are all really good at dealing with LeBlanc. So, LeBlanc as a champion's not bad right now. Again, all those items, the 3 big mid lane items, Frost Queens, Rod of Ages, and Abyssal Scepter, all good on her. However, you know, where she struggles is she has a hard time killing people safely right now. And it's hard to kill somebody and get out. You don't see immobile AD carries as much. One thing that helps her out is that her Mimic Distortion W cooldown on her ultimate is less than the time it takes a wave to come, which is about 30 seconds. So she can have that wave clear, which is why we see her, and which is why she's like the one assassin aside from like Ahri that we do actually see. But because she has to get so close to get so much of her damage in from her distortion, and there's so many champs that are good at stopping that. That's why we really don't see her that much. I mean, that's why she's down here in tier 2. Alright, so after LeBlanc, I have Ezreal mid. So Ezreal mid's in a really interesting place. Ezreal as a champion really benefit from the Frozen Gauntlet changes. Now it gives 20% CDR, no AP, and the size of the field does not diminish because you're ranged. So that really helped Blue Ezreal. And of course, this is Blue Ezreal I'm talking about. So Blue Ezreal in the mid lane has a safe laning phase against any of these champions, except for like LeBlanc. Basically, Ezreal mid can get through laning phase, and you know, laning phases are extended, especially in lane sub scenarios. I really want to stress this. So like, champions like Ezreal really benefits from a long laning phase. So, you know, when mid tower doesn't fall till 20 minutes, Ezreal can get his 2 items and get his Muramana and really turn on to his power spike. The only issue is Ezreal's wave clear isn't great. He's passable mid lane because he's able to fire out Mystic shots so often with a Frozen Gauntlet that, you know, he's able to effectively clear waves if he has a blue buff. So, really a pick to watch for. We've seen it a lot more this week than we had in past weeks, but you know, not the best pick, but definitely not the worst. Definitely pickable in pro play. Everything here is pickable. I want to stress that, and like, I don't include champs that I don't think you should pick. So after Ezreal is TF. TF is in a kind of odd spot. Really benefits from the extended laning phase and lack of vision. He has wave clear, but you know, his assassination potential is really kind of counteracted by mid laners that take teleport, and like any, except for Ahri, like Lulu, Lissandra, Victor, Lux are all going to be able to take TP. TF can't really lane into LeBlanc, and Corki has a really good laning phase against him. He's got hard laning phases into meta mid laners, and the other ones can take teleport to counteract his plays. One thing that does make him good, and I'd like to see him a little bit more, is because he does have incredible tower damage. Like, he can rotate a blue card onto a tower, deal a lot of damage. Once he gets his Lich Bane, his split pushing ability goes way up. I really don't think he's a bad champion. I just don't think he's the best right now. And you know, maybe we'll see him more, but his ability to make plays is kind of tarnished when laning phase ends really early because of a lane swap, or sorry, standard 2v2 laning ends really early in a lane swap, which is what happens. 2v2 laning ends, and one team just shoves it in while the other sits mid, and then they rotate, and it's very boring. But so TF doesn't do well in that type of scenario, type of game. Okay, next, that's all the like standard picks. So I guess I have this question mark tier again, and that's Syndra and Varus. So Syndra's a champ that we saw Bjergsen play in the TSM TL game, and we saw Paraviva play. Kind of fits the bill on these wave clear mid laners. She is incredible wave clear. Why I think Syndra, this question mark tier is like champions I expect to see more of, but don't have enough information to place right now. So Syndra, incredible wave clear, has that assassination potential too. Um, unless you use your burst on something like top Graves, she's generally be able to kill an AD carry in a fight. And she's really good against squishy targets, which this meta features a lot of. So I think Syndra's probably trending up as a champion. We might see a lot more of her, but right now, don't have enough information. Varus, the next champion, kind of opposite reason. Poke comps are going to be really good when towers are so valuable. Poke comps take towers. Varus is like the ideal mid laner to put a poke comp. Papa Smithy mentioned Storm Raider Surge Varus, which I expect we'll start seeing pretty soon. It's very safe. Q for 30% of an opponent's HP, and then just get that burst of movement speed. Varus, of course, very, very gankable, so that's probably why we don't see him. And poke comps, you really don't need a poke comp to take towers in the meta right now. Poke comps really, really struggle if they don't take towers early, and you could run a comp that is still safe after 20 minutes if they don't have a commanding tower lead. So, we may see more Varus depending, but that's why he's in my question mark tier. All right, so AD carry, tier 1. So tier 1, we have Kalista and Lucian. So each of these carries is really, really good for their own reason. So Kalista's really, really good at objective control, and the ability to be able to take an early Baron, and so Kalista allows you to start a Baron at 25 minutes, and then not have to worry about it being a 50-50 smite for the game, because she gets you that ability to secure Baron for sure. So that's really important. Also, she is a champion that we see mostly creating favorable lanes. So Kalista has a very good laning phase with range supports. Like, it's really hard to lane against Kalista in range support because just the ability to pop her passive so much. Also lanes incredibly well. She also creates favorable fights because her ability, if she has a melee support like Alistar or Thresh or Trundle, she can just throw them in there and then they can get all their CC down, and that is no fun for anyone. So Kalista's really good there. The champions that do well against her, traditionally like Tristana, aren't in the meta right now, so Kalista's incredibly strong. Alright, so Lucian is also somebody I have at tier 1. Same power level as Kalista. So Lucian, as I mentioned before, really, really probably the best champion in the meta to synergize with Lulu. He's probably your hardest carry threat that you see right now from AD carry. Just a very good AD carry. Takes towers very quickly due to his double tap passive. The culling is a ridiculous ability. It's good for disengaging, good for finishing targets. Both these champions offer disengage too, which is something that's really, really good right now. If you're, again, it's these multiple AD carry comps that don't want to fight. When you have 2 or 3 AD carries, you're not going to win a 5v5 team fight with when somebody has like a Tahm Kench top with 5,000 armor. You're never going to kill them, so you don't team fight them. So Lucian can discourage people from entering a fight. Kalista can pull people out and CC people. So that's why they are at tier 1 for AD carry. Lucian probably the hardest carry threat we see in the meta. He can kite around divers. Really just overall solid champion. Probably most solid traditional AD carry champions. So next, tier 1.5 is Corki AD carry. Lot of value, almost tier 1 I'd say, because of his flex pick potential. Again, get favorable lane matchups based off that. Corki is a very, very strong laner. Can lane into almost anything. His ability to create plays out of nowhere with the package is something no other AD carry can do, and so that's why Corki's really valuable. Additionally, he lets you run an otherwise very heavy ADC or AD composition because he just does 75% magic damage, and it's really, really hard to not itemize against him, and you're going to get punished really hard if you don't build magic resist against a team with Corki. So, again, what I talked about with Corki mid, able to poke people off towers and get them down, very valuable. Just think he's slightly better in the mid role right now, but still very good. Another champion we saw mid is Ezreal. All the reasons I talked about mid, it's just in bottom lane he has really, really bad lane matchups where he can't lane, and so that's what's holding him back. Champion, once you hit 35 minutes, we all saw what happened in the TSM versus TL game, where Ezreal just was able to kite everybody and lay down Mystic shots, and when Doublelift wasn't like shifting way over aggressively, the champion just looked incredible. So once he gets his 2 or 3 items and Frozen Gauntlet, he's just impossible to deal with. It's just he gets knocked because he creates an unfavorable matchup when you run him. So at tier ? Tier, we have Caitlyn. Seen some play in NA recently. I haven't been particularly overwhelmed by her, but it's something I'd like to see more of maybe. But not sure about Caitlyn right now. Strong laning. Very, very, very good objective control. Setting up 4 traps around a turret and being able to siege it down is so good. So maybe you'll see her more because of that. She allows your team to take towers really well. But again, ? Tier right now. MF also here. So she looked really, really good when there was a Morgana in that Vitality versus Fnatic game. Morgana could protect her, and she could get full channel ultimates off, and then she looked really, really bad in the Cloud9 versus Immortals game, where Immortals had a Cho'Gath and she couldn't do anything. So I don't think she's as good. Her laning isn't nearly as oppressive as it was since the Make It Rain nerfs came in. So she doesn't create favorable lanes as much as she used to. So still waiting to see on her, but don't think she's as strong as some of these other champions that I've listed. Next is Tristana. I really don't like Tristana in the meta right now. Obviously, she's a champion that demolishes towers, but she's also a champion that needs 2 items to teamfight, and needing a champion like that is kind of harmful right now. That's kind of why I dinged Ezreal, but Ezreal can at least provide a lot of utility. Tristana really doesn't do anything before 2 items. Knock down towers, sure. But, in games that can go really fast, for all the talk about the lane swap meta, for every 40-minute drawn-out lane swap game, there's a 26-minute standard lanes game where one team gets a massive advantage through laning phase and just snowballs into towers. So, Tristana, really not sold on her. You'd think she'd be good because towers are so important, but all these other champions knock down towers easily as well. Like, when you have a Kalista in a 3v0 pushing down a tower, she does that, okay, a couple seconds slower than Tristana, but she makes up for it in other ways. At support. Alright. Support, I have tier 1, Alistar. Really, probably the best support overall. Great engage, great disengage. Does really, really well against Kindred because of his displacement. That's really important right now. Can displace people out of fights, which is huge. Unbreakable Will is really good because it lets Alistar do things that no other support can. Like, Alistar can go off for really, really dangerous deep warding missions that no other support can, and establish deep vision, and then just ult away. And I think that's really good, and that's why I'm at tier 1 support. Also great with Kalista, just being flung in there, the enemy team can just engage, has kill pressure in 2v2 lane. Very, very good. Next I have Thresh, kind of the dual support. Didn't look as hot in week 1, but is looking a lot better this week. Creates picks with hooks, can disrupt people with Flay. The box is really, really good disengage. Thresh's probably most useful aspect right now is his disengage. Well, that is pick potential, but his disengage, he's somebody you can run in these multiple AD carry comps. If you're running, if your Graves jungle gets too deep, you can throw a lantern. If your 380 carry team is about to get run down, you throw up the box, and then they don't run you down. So, Thresh does all that, pairs well with Kalista. Next is going to be, just going down here, Trundle. Nerfs hit him kind of hard, but ult smashes tanks. Now that we don't see tanks as much, not as much Trundle. So he's good pick against Tahm Kench, but Poppy's pretty good against, but, you know, great. Gnar, sure. Random tanks, yeah. So, you know, we see him there, but Trundle's primarily used to disrupt tanks. Another champion who's got offers really good favorable fights and objective control. Pillar on towers is really disruptive and allows your team to get a lot of free damage in. It also prevents the enemy team from counter-engaging on you when you're sieging. So, I value that very highly, and that's why he's a tier 1 support. Laning nothing outstanding, but he does a lot out of lane, so that's why he's tier 1. Okay, so tier 2, I have Bard all alone. So, what Bard does best right now is that he creates a lane that you can't 2v2. If you pick Kalista Bard, if you pick Lucian Bard, there's no... if you pick Kalista Bard and the other team picks Lucian Alistar, they can't 2v2 you. You know, Bard wins a 2v2 against Alistar, he wins it against Thresh, he wins against Trundle. So, Bard really creates favorable lanes, and that's where his probably highest value is. Additionally, his Magical Journey rotations are absolutely huge. Also allows him to get deep wards down in a similar way to Alistar. So, you know, a lot of utility from Magical Journey. You know, you see teams being able to rotate, like, really the CLG TSM game really illustrated why Bard's such a priority pick. I thought that Bard pick should have been a Trundle, because I saw the Mundo, but, you know, the Bard really was good. I mean, you see, you know, Bard Kalista walk into top lane, and Tristana, Alistar, push a wave, and immediately have to back, and then they get so far behind, and that creates a scenario where Zion's able to get up 30 CS and have solo gold, and Haunter gets dove. So that's all created by the fact that Bard creates a 2v2 matchup problem, and, you know, kind of fulfills the same capacity as old Nami, lane bully, but, you know, does a lot for the team. Ultimate really good for creating picks early. Late game, it's really hard to get a good Bard ultimate off, but, you know, if you ultimate their front line, you can go for their back line, you ultimate their back line, you can go for their front line while they don't do damage, so got a lot of utility. Yep. Alright, unsure about tier is going to be Braum. I have absolutely no idea why Yellow Star picked Braum today in the TSM Immortals game. I really, the bottom lane combination of Caitlyn and Braum just made no sense to me. So Braum's really good. I'd say two things Braum's really good at. One is that his Unbreakable blocks a lot of stuff. So if you see something like a Syndra, Unbreakable eats that. If you see Elise Cocoon, Morgana Binding, you know, he eats that. You know, Varus. So Braum traditionally saw a lot of play when there was a lot of poke around. Corki rockets too. So maybe that was the plan. You know, pick him against the Corki, eat the rocket damage. But I really don't think he's that strong. The other thing, is that his level 1 presence is great. So level 1's really important, so if you want to get deep wards down to establish favorable lanes, Braum means the other team can't fight with you at level 1, because he will stun everybody, and you will lose the fight. So he's good there. I wouldn't pick him over any of these other supports. I really would just try to get one of these guys right here. And, or, you know, you can flex Tahm Kench down to support, but I think he's got a lot of more value at the top lane. Sorry, I had more tier 2 supports. So Shen really, Shen support makes it so other lanes can't fight when Shen is 6. So if you're playing against a team with a Fiora and you're running like a Tahm Kench, and Fiora ults your Tahm Kench, then you can Shen ult up there and then kill the Fiora, and so that's really useful. Other than that, you know, teams that want to fight at level 6 and want to control lanes early, pick Shen. Otherwise, don't pick Shen. Braum is... Yep, we're talking about Braum. Morgana... Morgana is somewhere here. Sorry, I fell off my my first pick things. I think Alistar, Kalista. First pick worthy. Morgana... All the reasons I talked about top lane, Black Shield's really good, Dark Binding's really good, Soul Shackle's pretty good. Not too much to say. I think she'll probably see more play top lane than support, but Black Shield's really good. It shuts down a lot of what these supports tried to do. She, along with Bard, kind of creates a lane you can't 2v2. Look at the Vitality Fnatic game. You have MF, Morgana, and there's nothing that can match up with that lane. Like, I think it was Lucian Alistar just can't match that lane. So, again, creates favorable lane matchups, creates favorable fights, objective control. Very good in all those aspects. And last, I want to say put Janna. So this is a champion we've seen almost exclusively played by Adrian of Immortals. Disengage is really good, but I think you would just pick Trundle for that, or pick Alistar for that. I'm not sure why you would pick Janna over these champions. Her ultimate's really good. She has more disengage than probably any of these champions. Her shield, she's alright in the 3v2 lane, but I don't know, she lanes well with Kalista, because you can pop that mark really very easily, creates a hard 2v2. But a champion to watch for in the meta is, I kind of disagreed with what Jad said, that we see these tankier supports when you have 380 carries. I think you want disengage more than anything else, but you see these tanks that offer disengage, so when you have 3 squishy targets, you might as well pick a tanky support that offers disengage. So, yep. Alright, that's it. Sorry for the long video. If you have anything you want to say, I'd love comments about this. I love discussing this stuff. If there's anybody I forgot, oh yeah, Poppy support. Still don't know where to put her. Seen play pretty much only exclusively in NA. Some in EU. Think she's better in the top lane. Best in the top lane. Probably is also a tier 2 jungler with Nidalee. Probably best top support than jungle, so Poppy has that flex pick ability as well. But I think you're almost always going to see your top lane. So, alright, well that is the 6.1 competitive tier list.